Welcome back to the channel, my gorgeous overthinkers. It's Ava. We've all heard of the classic betrayal, the charming fiancé fae, the loyal best friend, the secret affair. Usually the bride finds out, cries in a bathroom, and cancels the caterer. But our girl Ruth, oh honey, Ruth is a billionaire CEO who suddenly gets the power to read minds 3 days before her wedding. She doesn't just cancel the wedding, she legally orchestrates their absolute financial slaughter. Let's break down the absolute best moments of this masterpiece. I am Ruth West, 28 years old, and the CEO of the West real estate empire. For the past 5 years, I believed I was the luckiest woman in New York. I had a thriving legacy, a loyal best friend, and a fiancé, Dale Crawford, whose devotion seemed as flawless as his Ivy League pedigree. In exactly 3 days, we were supposed to have the wedding of the century at the Plaza Hotel. I was standing in the center of a private VIP fitting room on Fifth Avenue, the crisp white silk of my wedding gown trailing across the pedestal. My assistant and lifelong friend, Wendy, was supposed to be waiting just outside the heavy oak doors with Dale. Suddenly, a blinding pain pierced my skull. It was as if an ice pick had been driven directly into my temples. I stumbled, gripping the edge of the gilded mirror, squeezing my eyes shut until the agony slowly ebbed away into a dull throb. As the ringing in my ears faded, a voice replaced it. It wasn't spoken aloud. It echoed directly inside my mind, crisp and unmistakable. Just 3 more days, once the ring is on her finger, and those final authorization papers are filed. The West board is mine. I'll phase her out as CEO within 6 months. My breath hitched. It was Dale's voice. I froze, staring at my pale reflection in the mirror. Was I hallucinating from the stress? Then another voice slithered into my consciousness. And I'll finally stop playing the loyal, grateful best friend. God, me back aches. I wonder if our baby will have your eyes, Dale. Let the stupid heiress fund our child's trust fund. She owes me for dragging me around as her charity case all these years. Wendy, my bridesmaid, the woman whose college tuition I had paid out of my own pocket. Me knees buckled, and I sank onto the velvet ottoman, me hands trembling. This wasn't a hallucination somehow. Impossibly, I was hearing their exact thoughts. Just keep her distracted, Dale's thought echoed again, dripping with a cold arrogance I had never heard from him. She's so blindly in love she'd sign over the city to me if I asked with a smile. The moment the honeymoon is over, I'm initiating the corporate restructuring. She won't see it coming. A wave of pure nausea washed over me. 5 years. 5 years of gentle forehead kisses, of him bringing me coffee during late-night board meetings, of Wendy acting as my confidante and fiercest defender. It was all a meticulously crafted illusion. They weren't just having an affair, they were plotting a hostile takeover of my life, my family's legacy, and my sanity. I stared down at my trembling hands. The panic lasted for exactly 1 minute. Then the West blood in my veins turned to ice breath. Ruth, you are a CEO. You deal with corporate sharks every day. These two are just parasites. I stood up, smoothed the invisible wrinkles from my gown, and forced my heart rate to slow. If they wanted a flawless performance, I would give them an Academy Award, winning one. I pushed open the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the showroom. Dale was lounging on the velvet sofa, looking like the picture of a devoted groom in his tailored suit. Wendy stood beside him, holding a clipboard, playing the diligent wedding planner. Darling, Dale beamed, standing up to offer me his hand. You look absolutely breathtaking, like a walking bank account, his inner voice sneered. Just smile, Dale. 3 more days of pretending to care about this frigid workaholic. I took his hand. His skin felt like a snake's scales against mine, but I forced a radiant smile. Thank you, Dale. I just want everything to be perfect for us. It will be, Wendy chimed in, stepping forward with a makeup brush to touch up my blush. Her smile was sickeningly sweet. You are going to be the happiest bride in New York, Ruth. Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. You arrogant bitch, Wendy's mind hissed as she dabbed the brush against my cheek. By next year, I'll be the one living in the penthouse and you'll be a laughingstock. I couldn't do it without you, Wendy, I said, my voice smooth. locking eyes with her. You've been so apply involved in my relationship. I really want to give you exactly what you deserve. Wendy's hand faltered for a fraction of a second, a micro-expression of unease flashing across her eyes before she masked it. Did she mean something by that? No, she's too stupid to notice anything. Oh, you don't owe me anything, Ruth. We're family, Wendy lied flawlessly. Speaking of family and our future, Dale interrupted, pulling me into a gentle embrace. My lawyer sent over that final post-nup investment authorization, the one that allows me to manage our joint portfolio while you focus on the wedding. Did you get a chance to look at it? Please say you didn't read it. Please just sign it so I can legally drain the liquid assets. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady, deceitful rhythm of his heart. The authorization. He had pitched it as a romantic gesture, to take the financial stress off my shoulders before the honeymoon. I hadn't read the fine print yet. Now, he didn't need to. I haven't had a moment to breathe, Dale, I said softly, stepping back. In fact, I just got an urgent email from the board. I need to head back to the office immediately. Dale's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Damn it, always the company first. Just sign the paper, you idiot. But darling, we have the cake tasting in an hour, he said, feigning disappointment. I know, and I am so sorry, I replied, already signaling the boutique staff to help me out of the dress. Why don't you and Wendy go? You two have such similar tastes anyway. I trust you both completely. Wendy's eyes lit up. Perfect, a private hour with Dale at the hotel. If you are sure, Ruth, Wendy said, feigning reluctance. We'll take care of it. I know you will, I smiled. As I prepared to leave, Dale pulled me in for one last kiss on the forehead. Don't work too hard, my love. I'll leave the authorization on your desk tonight. Just sign it when you have a second. The trap is set. His inner voice gloated, dark and triumphant. You are finished, Ruth. I looked up into his lying eyes, my own expression a mask of pure, unadulterated adoration. Don't worry, Dale, I whispered, me voice dripping with honey and unspoken poison. I am going to make sure every single document is handled exactly the way it should be. Tomorrow, I am going to give you a surprise you will never, ever forget. I turned and walked out of the boutique, the glass doors sliding shut behind me. The moment I hit the pavement of Fifth Avenue, me smile vanished. I pulled out my phone and dialed the private number of my lead corporate attorney. Queen behavior. Period. If most of us heard our fiancé and best friend mentally plotting to steal our fortune and pass off their affair baby as our problem, we'd be hyperventilating in a Vera Wang sample dress. Not Ruth. She gives them an Oscar-worthy performance of the clueless. Blushing bride, walks out the door, drops the mask, and calls her sniper. I mean, her lawyer. This right here is why she's the CEO. She didn't let her broken heart override her prefrontal cortex. Ladies, take notes. When a man shows you he's a liability, you don't throw a tantrum. You freeze his assets. Marcus, I said, me voice cold as steel. Cancel all my afternoon meetings. Bring the forensic accountants to my private estate. We are going to rip a contract apart, and then we are going to set a trap. The mahogany conference table in my private estate was covered in financial blueprints, but the atmosphere in the room was as cold as a morgue. Marcus, me lead corporate attorney, sat across from me. Beside him was the head of my forensic accounting team. Neither of them spoke as I slid the so-called post-nup investment authorization, the document Dale had so lovingly prepared for me, across the polished wood. Tear it apart, I ordered, my voice devoid of any emotion. I want to know exactly what I would be signing. Marcus adjusted his glasses, his eyes scanning the dense paragraphs. It didn't take long for his professional composure to crack. A deep frown etched into his forehead, and he looked up at me, his face pale. Ruth, Marcus began, his voice tight. This isn't a standard portfolio management authorization. Buried in Section 4 is a blanket power of attorney clause regarding your liquid assets. If you sign this, Dale would have the unilateral authority to transfer funds, leverage your shares as collateral, and assume control of the West offshore accounts. And why would my perfect Wall Street fiancé fade that kind of leverage? I asked, leaning back in my leather chair. The forensic accountant cleared his throat, sliding a separate red-tabbed folder toward me. Because Miss West, Dale Crawford is drowning, we ran a quiet background check on his private firm. He's been making catastrophic margin calls for the past 18 months. He owes nearly $40 million to some very unforgiving private equity lenders. He hasn't been managing wealth. He's been running a high-stakes Ponzi scheme to cover his losses. I stared at the numbers in the folder. 40 million. He didn't just want my company. He needed my blood to pay off his executioners. If you sign that document tomorrow, Marcus warned softly, he will drain your liquid capital to zero by Monday morning, leaving you legally responsible for the corporate fallout. A chilling silence filled the room. 5 years of I love yous, all leading to this meticulously designed slaughterhouse. I see, I murmured, tapping my manicured nail against the glass table. Then we won't give him the capital, but we will give him the signature. Marcus blinked, confused. Ruth, if you sign this... I am not signing away my empire, Marcus, I interrupted, my eyes locking onto his with predatory focus. I want you to initiate an irrevocable blind trust immediately. Transfer every single voting share, every real estate deed, and every cent of liquid capital out of the accounts listed in Dale's document. Do it quietly. By midnight tonight, I want those specific account numbers to be nothing but hollow shells. Marcus's eyes widened as the realization hit him. Then, I continued, eraser, thin smile touching my lips, funnel the toxic debt from our recently acquired, failing subsidiary into those exact shell accounts. When Dale takes control of them tomorrow, he won't be inheriting the West fortune. He'll be inheriting a corporate graveyard. Marcus let out a breath. He didn't realize he was holding. It's brilliant. It's entirely legal. And it will bury him. Make it happen, I commanded. As the lawyers scrambled to execute the trap, my phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from the private investigator I had hired the second I left the bridal boutique. He opened the file. High-resolution photos filled my screen. Dale and Wendy walking hand in hand into Manhattan's most exclusive private maternity clinic. A second photo showed them at a Michelin-starred restaurant in Tribeca, toasting with champagne. Attached was a brief audio clip captured by a directional microphone. I pressed play. Did she suspect anything at the boutique? Dale's voice asked. Ruth, please, Wendy scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. She was practically crying with gratitude when I touched up her makeup. She's so desperate for a family. She's blind. Did you bring the papers? They're on her desk. Once she signs them tonight, we're clear. By the time she realizes the money is gone, she'll be too busy dealing with the board's vote of no confidence to stop us. I locked my phone, the screen going black. They were celebrating with my money, drinking my champagne, laughing at my supposed stupidity. Enjoy the champagne. Wendy, he thought, my heart beating with a terrifying, issy calm. It's the last expensive thing you'll ever taste. At 8 o'clock that evening, I was sitting in the dimly lit study of my penthouse, nursing a glass of sparkling water. The door clicked open, and Dale walked in. He looked exhausted, playing the part of the hard-working provider to perfection. Hey, beautiful, he murmured, walking over to press a soft kiss to the top of my head. Sorry I am late. The market was a nightmare today. I can't wait to never step foot in that miserable office again. His inner voice groaned. Just get the signature and get out. It is okay, darling, I said, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes. I know how hard you work for our future. Everything I do is for us, he lied effortlessly, loosening his silk tie. He casually glanced at the mahogany desk. Right in the center sat the leather-bound folder he had left for me. I see you found the paperwork. Did you get a chance to look it over? I sighed, rubbing my temples as if I were overwhelmed. I did, but Dale, the legal jargon is just so dense. Are you sure this is necessary? I've always managed my own accounts. A flicker of irritation crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with a patient, loving smile. Stupid, stubborn woman, just pick up the pen. His mind snarled. Ruth, sweetheart, he said, kneeling beside my chair and taking my hands in his. You are the brilliant CEO. You build the buildings. Let me handle the mundane portfolio balancing. This just gives me the clearance to optimize our assets while we're on our honeymoon in the Maldives. I don't want you checking stock tickers on the beach. I looked deeply into his eyes, marveling at how easily the deception flowed from him. If I hadn't heard the venom in his thoughts, I would have fallen for it again. You are right, I whispered softly. I should trust my future husband completely. Hook, line, and sinker, his inner voice cheered, practically vibrating with greedy anticipation. God, it's almost too easy. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen from the desk. I didn't hesitate. I didn't tremble. With swift, elegant strokes, I signed my name at the bottom of the authorization, legally binding him to the empty debt. Ridden shell accounts Marcus had prepared, I handed the folder to him. There, it is done. Dale took the folder, his fingers gripping the leather just a little too tightly. A genuine, terrifying smile broke across his face. Thank you, Ruth. You won't regret this. I own you, his mind whispered, dark and victorious. I finally own it all. He stood up, walking over to the bar cart. We should celebrate, to us and to our future. He poured 2 glasses of my most expensive vintage red wine, handing one to me. I took the crystal glass, feeling the cool weight of it in my hand. To us, I echoed, raising the glass. And to getting exactly what we deserve. Dale clinked his glass against mine. To my new empire, he thought, taking a deep sip. I didn't drink, I just watched him swallow the wine. A predator observing its prey. He thought he had just secured $1 billion fortune. He didn't know he had just signed his own financial death warrant. Tomorrow was the wedding. The Plaza Hotel. 500 of New York's most elite socialites, investors, and media moguls would be in attendance. Sleep well tonight, Dale, he thought, setting my untouched wine on the desk. Because tomorrow, I am going to burn your entire world to the ground. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of white orchids and crystal chandeliers. 500 of New York's most powerful figures, Wall Street titans, real estate moguls, and socialites, sat in hushed anticipation. In the bridal suite, me custom silk gown felt less like a wedding dress, and more like a suit of armor. Wendy stood behind me, adjusting my veil with practiced gentle hands. You look absolutely perfect, Ruth, she cooed, her reflection catching mine in the vanity mirror. Dale is going to lose his breath when he sees you. Just one more hour of playing the servant, her inner voice sneered, toxic and impatient. By tonight, I'll be the one picking out the new furniture for the penthouse. I hope she doesn't cry too much when Dale tells her he is working late, on their honeymoon. I met her eyes in the mirror and smiled, a cool, practiced curve of my lips. You've been such a dedicated friend, Wendy. I promise you, today you are going to get exactly the reward you deserve. Wendy blinked, a micro-expression of confusion flashing across her features before she smoothed it over with a saccharine smile. I just want you to be happy, Ruth. Oh, I will be, I whispered. The wedding march began to play. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom swung open. I walked down the aisle alone. I didn't need anyone to give me away. I owned the ground I walked on. As I glided past the pews, I kept my gaze fixed entirely on Dale, who stood at the altar looking like a prince from a fairy tale. Look at her, Dale's mind hummed as I approached, his thoughts dripping with dark, greedy triumph. So blindly in love, so pathetic. The paperwork is filed, the moment we say I do. The West Empire is mine. I reached the altar and handed my bouquet to Wendy. She took it, her fingers brushing mine, her mind already calculating the square footage of my summer home in the Hamptons. The Archbishop began the ceremony. He spoke of trust, of unwavering loyalty, and of the sacred bond of honesty. Every word felt like a perfectly scripted joke. Dale Crawford, the Archbishop intoned, his voice echoing through the silent ballroom. "Do you take Ruth West to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Dale said, his voice thick with feigned emotion. He looked deeply into my eyes. "I do want your money, your company, and your total surrender," his mind added. "And do you, Ruth West, take Dale Crawford to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Silence fell over the room. 500 guests held their breath. I looked at Dale. I looked at Wendy, who was dabbing a fake tear from her eye. Then he turned my head slightly toward the front row, where Marcus, me lead attorney, sat with a tablet in his lap. I gave him a single, imperceptible nod. I turned back to Dale, me smile vanishing instantly, my voice, when I spoke, was as cold and sharp as shattered glass. "Actually, Dale, I have a few adjustments to the contract before we close this deal." I took a step back, slipping my hands out of his. "I don't." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Dale's perfect smile froze. The color drained from his face. "Darling, what are you doing? Are you nervous?" "What the hell is she doing?" his mind screamed. A sudden spike of panic piercing his thoughts. "Just say the words." "You stupid bitch." "I am not nervous, Dale. I am just conducting a final audit," I said smoothly. I gestured behind the altar. The massive floral wall that served as our backdrop suddenly parted, revealing a colossal LED screen that was supposed to play our romantic montage during the reception. Instead, the screen flickered to life with a high-definition video. It was Dale and Wendy, walking hand in hand into the VIP entrance of Manhattan's most exclusive maternity clinic. The audio, enhanced and crystal clear, boomed through the ballroom speakers. "Did she suspect anything at the boutique?" Dale's voice echoed across the room. "Ruth, please. She's so desperate for a family. She's blind." Wendy's voice sneered from the speakers. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Gasps, whispers, and the clicking of phone cameras filled the air. Wendy dropped my bouquet. The white roses scattered across the marble floor. Her face turned the color of ash, her eyes wide with sheer, unadulterated terror. No, how did she find out? We were so careful." "Ruth, wait, this is a misunderstanding," Dale stammered, stepping forward, his hands raised in a desperate plea. His mask was slipping, revealing the terrified fraud beneath. "That video is doctored. It is a deepfake. Someone is trying to ruin us." "A deepfake," I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Then I suppose the $300,000 you charged to my black card for Wendy's hotel suites over the last 6 months is also a clerical error." The screen flashed again, bank statements, credit card receipts, dates and times that perfectly aligned with my overseas business trips. "You are sick, Dale," I said, my voice projecting clearly over the murmuring crowd. "But your infidelity isn't even the most pathetic part of your plan." I took a step closer to him. He shrank back, his bravado entirely gone. "You thought I signed that post-nup authorization last night," I whispered, just loud enough for him and the front row to hear. "You thought I gave you the keys to the West Liquid assets." Dale's eyes darted wildly. "She signed it. I saw her sign it. The money is mine." "I did sign it," I confirmed, reading his panic. "But I didn't authorize access to my wealth. Last night, my lawyers transferred every cent of my capital into an irrevocable blind trust. The accounts you took legal control of this morning are holding the toxic debt of a bankrupt subsidiary." Dale stopped breathing. The muscles in his jaw twitched violently. "Check your phone, Dale," I commanded, my voice dripping with absolute authority. With trembling hands, Dale pulled his phone from his tuxedo pocket. He fumbled with the banking app. I watched his pupils dilate in real time as the screen loaded. Balance $40 million. Access denied. Assets frozen. Number. Dale choked out, his voice cracking. "No, this is illegal. You can't do this to me." "You did it to yourself," I replied coldly. "You didn't marry a billionaire today, Dale. You married $40 million of corporate debt. The absolute audacity of a man running a $40 million Ponzi scheme crying illegal when he gets outsmarted. I am cackling. Dale really thought he bagged a walking ATM who was too blindly in love to read the fine print. Men like Dale always underestimate successful women. They think our hearts make us stupid. watching him realize he just legally strapped himself to a sinking ship of toxic debt, right at the altar is poetic cinema. He wanted her empire and she handed him a corporate graveyard chef's kiss. Wait, what? Wendy shrieked, suddenly pushing past the altar steps, grabbing Dale's arm. Her carefully crafted sweet persona had completely evaporated, replaced by raw, ugly panic. Dale, what does she mean? What about the trust fund for the baby? What about the penthouse? He has no money, he is broke. I gave up my youth for a bankrupt fraud. Wendy's mind shrieked, the realization hitting her like a freight train. Dale shoved her off him, his face contorted with rage. Shut up, Wendy, just shut up. Don't you tell me to shut up. Wendy screamed back, her perfectly styled hair falling into her face as she clawed at his lapels. You promised me. You said she was just the bank. They were tearing each other apart right in front of the altar. It was a pathetic, beautiful sight, but the real checkmate had just begun. In the third row of the audience, 3 men in tailored suits stood up. They weren't my guests. They were Dale's private equity investors, the dangerous men he owed money to, the ones he had invited to the wedding to prove he was about to secure my fortune. One of them, a silver-haired man with cold, dead eyes, pulled out his phone. Lock down his firm, the man said quietly into the receiver, his voice carrying in the sudden silence of the room. And call the Federal Fraud Division, he lied on his collateral sheets. Dale heard it. He looked at the investors, and the last drop of blood left his face. His knees literally buckled, and he collapsed onto the marble steps of the altar, clutching his chest as he hyperventilated. I looked away from the wreckage of my ex-fiancé and let my gaze sweep over the crowd. Near the back, standing near the grand arches, was a man I hadn't noticed before. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, with striking features and calm, observant eyes. Dr. Arthur Kensington. Unlike the rest of the shocked and gossiping crowd, he was simply watching me. A faint, admiring smile played on his lips. I focused on him, and his inner voice drifted into my mind, clear, warm, and entirely devoid of malice. Checkmate, darling, beautifully played. You didn't just dodge a bullet, you fired the cannon. I held my head high, turned my back on the sobbing bridesmaid and the ruined groom, and began to walk back down the aisle. The wedding was over, but my life was just beginning. 48 hours after the spectacular implosion at the Plaza Hotel, I was back behind the sprawling mahogany desk of my corner office on the 60th floor of the West Building. The Manhattan skyline stretched out behind me, a concrete kingdom that remained entirely unequivocally mine. I didn't shed a single tear. I didn't take a leave of absence. Sharks don't stop swimming when the water gets bloody. They just swim faster. Marcus, me lead attorney, sat across from me, a rare, genuine smile pulling at the corners of his mouth. He slid a sleek black folder across the desk. The Federal Trade Commission and the SEC moved faster than we anticipated, Marcus reported, his tone crisp. Dale's investment firm was raided yesterday morning. His private equity lenders filed a joint civil suit for $50 million in damages because he used fraudulent collateral to secure those loans. His broker's license has been permanently revoked. And his personal assets, I asked, casually flipping open the folder. Liquidated or frozen, Marcus replied. He was evicted from his luxury apartment yesterday afternoon from, what my contacts tell me, he's currently trying to retain a public defender from a cheap motel in Queens. I closed the folder, the satisfying thud echoing in the quiet office. Dale had tried to play a billionaire's game with empty pockets. No, he was buried under the rubble of his own ambition. Before I could respond, a sudden commotion erupted outside my office doors. You can't go in there, Miss West is in a meeting. My receptionist's voice panicked. The heavy glass doors burst open, and Wendy stumbled into the room, flanked by 2 burly security guards who had her by the arms. I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, smug bridesmaid from 2 days ago was gone. Her designer clothes were rumpled, her hair was a chaotic mess, and her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. The sheer panic radiating from her was palpable. Ruth, please. You have to talk to me, Wendy shrieked, struggling against the guards. I raised a single hand, signaling the guards to stop. "It is fine, gentlemen. Let her speak, but stay by the door." The guards released her, and Wendy practically collapsed onto the edge of my desk, her hands trembling violently. "Ruth, I had nowhere else to go," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "Dale is gone. He blocked my number. He took the last of the cash from my purse and left me at the hotel." I leaned back in my leather chair, steepling my fingers. I focused on her, letting her internal voice bleed into my mind. "Just look pathetic. Cry harder. She's soft. She's always been soft. If I beg, she'll at least give me a severance package. I can't go back to waitressing. I can't." My expression remained carved from ice. She wasn't sorry she betrayed me. She was sorry she backed the losing horse. "Why are you here, Wendy?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Did you lose your way to the maternity ward?" Wendy flinched as if I had slapped her. "Ruth, you have to believe me, he manipulated me. He told me you two were falling apart, that it was a business arrangement. I was weak." "You weren't weak, Wendy. You were greedy," I corrected her, my tone flat. "You didn't sleep with my fiancé by accident. You didn't plot to drain my family's legacy by mistake. But I have nothing." She wailed, tears streaming down her face. "I can't even pay my rent. You ruined him, fine. But you can't leave me like this." "We were like sisters. Sisters." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I glanced at Marcus, who was watching the exchange with professional detachment. "Marcus, did you inform Miss Thorne about the credit accounts?" Wendy stopped crying, her breath hitching. What credit accounts?" Marcus adjusted his glasses. "During our forensic audit, we discovered that Dale Crawford opened several high-yield credit lines to fund the luxury hotel suites and designer gifts he purchased over the last 6 months." So Wendy stammered, her eyes darting between us. "So," I continued, leaning forward, my eyes locking onto her terrified face. "Dale knew his own credit was garbage, so he opened those accounts under your name. Wendy, you signed the guarantor paperwork for him. You thought you were signing VIP access forms." Wendy's jaw dropped. The last remnants of color drained from her face, leaving her looking like a ghost. No, the bills, the receipts at the wedding, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars." Her internal voice was a deafening scream of pure terror. "You are personally liable for nearly $400,000 in credit card debt," I stated, delivering the final blow without a shred of pity. "Your luxury lifestyle wasn't funded by my money, Wendy. It was funded by your own future. And here lies Wendy, the ultimate pick. Me girl, she was so busy being jealous of Ruth and plotting to steal her penthouse that she blindly signed guarantor papers for a broke fraudster. She traded a lifelong loyal friendship for a guy who left her with $500,000 in debt and a one-way ticket back to waitress. Ville in Ohio, it's a harsh truth, but karma is a debt collector that always comes knocking. Never go into debt for a man, babes. Especially not another woman's trash. You set me up," she gasped, clutching her chest as she hyperventilated. "I didn't do anything," I replied smoothly. "I merely stepped out of the way and let you two destroy yourselves. Security, escort Miss Thorne out of the building, permanently. Ruth, please, I am pregnant." "You can't do this!" Wendy screamed as the guards grabbed her arms again, dragging her backward. "Send the bills to Dale," I called out as she was pulled through the doors. "I am sure he has some spare change in his motel room." The doors clicked shut, cutting off her hysterical sobs. The silence that followed was absolute perfection. That evening, the Metropolitan Museum of Art was hosting the most exclusive charity gala of the season. I arrived wearing a sleek midnight blue gown, looking every inch the untouchable West heiress. The room was buzzing. I knew exactly what they were whispering about, the Plaza Hotel massacre. But as I moved through the crowd, no one dared to offer me pity. Instead, the elite investors and board members greeted me with a newfound, profound respect. I hadn't just survived a scandal, I had executed a flawless corporate defense. I excused myself from a conversation with a tech billionaire and stepped out onto the terrace to get some fresh air. The night was crisp, the city lights glittering below. I have to admit, I was expecting the plaza to charge extra for the cleanup of all those shattered egos. The voice was deep smooth and entirely relaxed. I turned. Standing a few feet away was Dr. Arthur Kensington. He looked even more striking up close, his tailored tuxedo perfectly complementing his sharp jawline and calm, intelligent eyes. He belonged to the Kensington family, old money, vast medical empire, but he had famously shunned the boardroom to become one of the top pediatric surgeons in the country. "Dr. Kensington," I acknowledged, offering a polite, guarded smile. "I noticed you in the back row at the wedding. I didn't realize you were on the guest list." "I wasn't," Arthur confessed, stepping closer. "My brother was invited, but he caught a flight to London. I took his RSVP. I have to say, it was the best theatrical performance I've seen on Broadway all year. I studied him carefully. Men in this circle always wanted something: money, influence, or the trophy of taming a powerful woman. I instinctively tuned into his mind, bracing myself for the inevitable arrogant or greedy thought. "She looks exhausted," his inner voice murmured softly. "Beautiful, completely formidable, but carrying the weight of the world. I wonder when was the last time someone just asked her how she was doing." I blinked, genuinely caught off guard. There was no calculation, no predatory ambition, just empathy and pure, unadulterated respect. Arthur picked up 2 flutes of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and offered one to me. "To narrow escapes," he said, holding his glass up. I slowly reached out and took the flute, me fingers briefly brushing against his. A warm spark of electricity shot up my arm. "To taking out the trash," I corrected him, clinking my glass against his. Arthur laughed, a rich, genuine sound that made the corners of his eyes crinkle. I took a sip of the champagne, unable to look away from him. As the bubbles danced on my tongue, his internal voice drifted into my mind once more, sealing my fate. "I don't care about her empire," Arthur thought. His eyes locked onto mine with a quiet, burning intensity. "But I would very much like to spend the rest of my life learning how to make her smile like that." For the first time in my life, my mind, reading ability didn't bring me a warning, it brought me a promise. 1 year later, the sprawling lawns of the Kensington family estate in the Hamptons were bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. There were no flashing cameras, no 500 forced smiles, and absolutely no press. This wedding was for us. Just 50 of our closest friends and family, gathered beneath a canopy of white wisteria. I stood in front of the floral arch, wearing a simple, elegant silk slip dress. There was no heavy veil, no crushing expectations, just the cool ocean breeze and the man standing across from me. Arthur held both of my hands, his thumbs gently tracing the knuckles. He looked at me with an expression of such profound adoration that it still, even after a year, took my breath away. "I still can't believe she chose me," his inner voice whispered, warm and steady. "She is the most brilliant thing in this world, and she's mine to protect." I smiled, a genuine, radiant curve of my lips that reached all the way to my eyes. The ability to read minds, which had once felt like a curse in the bridal suite on Fifth Avenue, had become my greatest comfort with Arthur. I never had to doubt his intentions. His mind was a sanctuary of honesty, respect, and a love so deep it anchored my soul. Arthur Kensington, the efficient, Arthur's old medical school mentor, spoke with a warm smile. "Do you take Ruth to be your wife?" "I do," Arthur said, his voice carrying clearly over the sound of the distant waves. "With every beat of my heart," his mind added. "And do you, Ruth, take Arthur to be your husband?" I didn't hesitate. There were no hidden contracts, no buried debts, no parasites waiting to drain my life force. "I do," I answered, my voice steady and full of conviction. As Arthur slipped the understated, flawless diamond band onto my finger, I felt a profound sense of peace. I hadn't just survived the wreckage of my past, I had rebuilt a kingdom on a foundation of absolute truth. When Arthur leaned in to kiss me, the small crowd erupted in genuine cheers. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of his embrace wash over me. 3 years later, the tinted windows of my chauffeured Lincoln Navigator shielded me from the glaring midday sun as we idled at a red light in Midtown Manhattan. In the back seat beside me, me 2-year-old daughter, Eleanor, was fast asleep, her head resting against my arm. She had Arthur's dark hair and my stubborn chin. She's perfect, Arthur's thought echoed in my memory from earlier that morning, as he had kissed us both goodbye before heading to the hospital. I am the luckiest man alive. I smiled softly, adjusting Eleanor's blanket. Traffic is a bit backed up, Miss West, my driver, Thomas, said over his shoulder. Looks like someone dropped a stack of flyers in the crosswalk. I glanced out the window, idly watching the pedestrians navigate the busy intersection. My eyes landed on a man scrambling on his hands and knees across the dirty asphalt, desperately trying to gather a pile of cheap promotional leaflets for a discount furniture store. He was wearing an ill-fitting faded grey suit that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. His face was gaunt, his hair thinning, and his shoulders hunched with the permanent weight of defeat. It was Dale. I watched him as he scrambled, a taxi honking aggressively at him. He flinched, dropping the flyers again, muttering apologies to the empty air. He didn't look up. He didn't see the sleek black SUV idling mere feet away. He didn't see the billionaire CEO he had once tried to destroy. I focused my mind, curious if the shark still existed beneath the pathetic exterior. Just get through the shift, just get the $20. If I don't pay the weekly rate at the motel, they'll lock me out again. God, me back hurts. Why did this happen to me? Why is life so unfair? I let out a quiet sigh. There was no grand revelation in his mind, no realization of his own villainy, just the endless, suffocating cycle of the consequences he had built for himself. Thomas, I said quietly, my voice devoid of any emotion. Yes, ma'am. Take the next right, let's head back to the estate. Arthur is finishing his surgery early today, and I want to be home when he gets there. Right away, Miss West. The light turned green, the heavy SUV glided forward, leaving the intersection and the man in the faded suit behind. I didn't look back. Later that afternoon, the sun was beginning to set over our private estate in upstate New York. I was sitting on the terrace, a cup of Earl Grey tea in my hands, watching the autumn leaves drift across the manicured lawn. I had heard through the grapevine what happened to Wendy. After the crushing weight of the debt Dale had saddled her with, she had tried to sue him, only to find out he was legally bankrupt. She ended up moving back to her small hometown in Ohio, working double shifts at a diner to support her child. The high society life she had schemed so viciously to steal was nothing but a bitter, distant memory. Karma, it turned out, was an exceptionally meticulous accountant. The French doors opened behind me, and footsteps sounded on the stone patio. I didn't need to turn around. I could feel the warmth of his presence before he even spoke. There she is, me whole world. Arthur wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. He smelled of fresh air and the faint, clean scent of the hospital. You are home early, I murmured, leaning back into his solid chest. I couldn't wait to see you, Arthur said, pressing a soft kiss to my temple. How was the board meeting? Flawless, I smiled. Profits are up 12% this quarter. The West Empire is stronger than ever. Of course it is, Arthur chuckled, his voice vibrating against me. You are at the helm. I turned my head to look at him. His eyes were bright, filled with that same unwavering honesty that had captivated me on the night of the Plaza disaster. I hoped the bastard was miserable. His mind fiercely protected me. He was handing out flyers on Fifth Avenue. I told him, a small, peaceful smile touching my lips. He looked exactly where he belongs. Arthur relaxed, a slow smile spreading across his face. Karmic justice is a beautiful thing, isn't it? It is, I agreed. I turned fully in his arms, wrapping my hands around his neck. The ability to read minds had started as a sharp, painful awakening. It had shown me the ugliest, most deceitful corners of human nature. It had forced me to burn down my own life to save myself. But, as I looked into Arthur's eyes, listening to the quiet, steady hum of his unconditional love, I knew it had all been worth it. I love you, Arthur, I whispered. I love you too, Ruth. He replied, kissing me deeply as the sun dipped below the horizon. Forever, his mind echoed, sealing the promise. And for the first time in my life, I knew the future was completely beautifully secure. 5 years later, a greasy rag wiped across the sticky laminate of a diner table in Dayton. Ohio Wendy paused, rubbing her aching lower back. The diner smelled permanently of stale frying oil and cheap coffee. Her uniform was stained, and the harsh fluorescent lights overhead highlighted the deep, exhausted lines around her eyes. She looked 10 years older than 33. Hey Wendy, table 4 needs a refill. The manager barked from the kitchen. Coming, Wendy muttered, her voice devoid of any life. She walked behind the counter to grab the coffee pot, her eyes briefly flicking up to the small, static-filled television mounted in the corner. It was tuned to a national financial news network. Suddenly, Wendy froze. The coffee pot slipped a fraction of an inch in her grip. On the screen was a live broadcast from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Sitting in a sleek leather chair, looking absolutely regal in a sharp, tailored blazer, was Ruth West. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, Ruth West Kensington, named Forbes' most powerful woman in real estate. Miss West, the interviewer asked, leaning forward with deep respect. In the past 8 years, you haven't just doubled your family's empire, you've revolutionized sustainable urban development across 3 continents. To what do you owe this flawless intuition? On the screen, Ruth smiled. It was the same cool, untouchable smile she had worn at the Plaza Hotel all those years ago. I simply learned to listen, David, Ruth replied, her voice smooth and commanding. People will always tell you exactly who they are and what they want. You just have to pay very close attention to the details they think you are missing. In the diner, Wendy stared at the screen, her breathing shallow. She has everything, Wendy's mind screamed, a toxic mix of agonizing regret and bitter envy clawing at her throat. She has the empire, the perfect billionaire husband, the respect of the world. And I am wiping tables for minimum wage. The camera cut to the audience, briefly focusing on the front row. Sitting there, looking at Ruth with an expression of unwavering pride and deep love, was Dr. Arthur Kensington. Wendy remembered the day she had packed her bags to flee New York, heavily pregnant and drowning in the debt Dale had forced onto her. Dale was currently serving a 5-year sentence in a federal penitentiary for a secondary wire fraud charge. He hadn't sent a single letter. Wendy, the coffee? A trucker at the counter snapped. Wendy jumped, spilling hot coffee onto her own wrist. She hissed in pain, tears of sheer humiliation stinging her eyes as she rushed to clean up the mess. She was a ghost trapped in a purgatory of her own making, forever forced to watch the woman she tried to destroy rule the world. Thousands of miles away, in the crisp alpine air of Switzerland, the interview concluded. I stepped off the brightly lit stage, the polite applause of global industry leaders echoing through the grand hall. My security detail seamlessly parted the crowd, but I only had eyes for one person. Arthur was waiting for me near the exit. Forbes' most powerful woman, Arthur murmured as I approached, his eyes crinkling with a warm smile. Should I bow? Only in private, I whispered back, letting him pull me into a brief, grounding embrace. She was magnificent up there. His inner voice echoed, pure and affectionate. I need to call the pilot and have the jet ready. She looks like she needs a glass of the vintage Bordeaux and a foot massage. I smiled, leaning my head against his chest for a fraction of a second. Even after 8 years of marriage, his mind was still the safest place on earth. No ulterior motives, no hidden resentment. Just Arthur. Is Eleanor asleep? I asked as we walked out into the chilly evening air, heading toward our waiting motorcade. Fast asleep at the hotel with the nanny, Arthur confirmed, opening the door of the Maybach for me, though she did demand to watch your broadcast on the iPad before she closed her eyes. She pointed at the screen and told everyone in the room, "That is my mommy." A fierce protective warmth bloomed in my chest. I slid into the plush leather seat, Arthur settling in beside me, as the car pulled away from the conference center, gliding smoothly through the snow, lined streets of Davos, He looked out the window. When the piercing headaches had first started in that bridal boutique, I thought my life was ending. I thought the truth was going to break me. But the truth doesn't break you. It sets you free. It burns away the parasites and the liars, leaving only the reinforced steel of your own strength. I rested my head on Arthur's shoulder, his hand naturally finding mine in the quiet darkness of the car. I love you, his mind whispered softly, anticipating my need for comfort before I even spoke a word. I love you too, I said aloud. The mind-reading ability had been quiet lately. I rarely used it in board meetings anymore. My own business acumen had been sharpened to a razor's edge. I didn't need a supernatural gift to spot a fraud. But as I closed my eyes, listening to the steady, honest heartbeat of the man beside me, I knew that if the voices ever came back, I was ready for them. The West Empire was untouchable, and the Queen was finally at peace. Let's get deep for a second. What I love most about Ruth's story isn't just the spectacular revenge. Though, let's be real, watching Dale and Wendy destroy each other at the altar was top-tier entertainment. What I love is how Ruth reclaimed her power. We don't all get a supernatural ice pick headache that lets us read minds. But honestly, we don't need to. We have something called women's intuition, and 99% of the time, we already know when someone is playing us. We see the micro-expressions, we notice the weird phone habits, we feel the energy shift. We just gaslight ourselves into ignoring it because we want the fairy tale so badly. Ruth's superpower was just the universe turning the volume up on the truth. She was probably already sensing. And let's talk about the ultimate palate cleanser of this story, Dr. Arthur Kensington. A man with his own money, his own career, and an internal monologue that is pure, unadulterated green flags. When you finally clear out the parasites and the users from your life, you create the space for someone who actually values you, not your bank account. Ruth had to burn down her illusion of a perfect life to build a real one. So, me beautiful observers, I want to hear from you. If you suddenly got the power to read your partner's mind for just 5 minutes, would you want to hear it? And if you found out you were being played like Ruth, are you setting a legal trap? Are you just ghosting them? Drop your thoughts, your own petty revenge stories, or your red flag warnings in the comments below. You know I read every single one of them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and protect your peace and your assets. I'll see you in the next video. Stay sharp, ladies.